Kuf Tzadik, just now. Kuf Tzadik discusses the ideas of ktamim. The Tur and the Mechaber open up by saying Dvar Torah. Tur opens by saying Dvar Torah. Ein ha'isha metamo v'lo yasura l'baylo ad shetargish sheyotza dam mibsara. When does a woman become tamei? Midiraisa, when she has a hargosha that blood came out from her body. Yotz targish and mibsara. It's two limudim in the Gemara. One is targish and dam and mibsara. Dam and not kesem. Chachamim goes, Chachamim give exer on every kesem that is found that she's tamei, even though afa pi shelo hirgisha. And then she has to count Shiva Nekim, except for the day that she found the Kesem, as if she saw a full Re'iyah. The same Lashon is also in the Shulchan Aruch, in the beginning of Siman Kuf Tzadik. The same Lashon, pretty much the same Lashon. Dvar Torah in Aisha Metama v'la Asura l'baylo at shetargish yetzedom ipsara. And then the Mechaber writes, and then she counts Shiva Nekim, and the Rama adds, Ke'ilu Ra'asa Vadai, as if she saw for sure. What is the reason for ktamim? That means we learned in Kuf Pei Gimel the din of Argosha. We saw the previous in Kuf Pei Tes the dinim of deciding on the dinim of deciding on when there's a vesis and when there is no vesis. And now that we're coming to ktamim, ktamim is fully derabanan. Why is ktamim derabanan? Why were the chachamim goizer? What defines a kesem? What does the Torah say it's aser, and what does the chachamim say that it's aser? For that, there's an interesting Sidrei Tahara, quite long Sidrei Tahara, I must say, that is in the end of Siman Kuf Tzadik, close to the end of Siman Kuf Tzadik. It's Sifkot and Tzadik Gimel in the Sidrei Tahara. It's very long. I'm going to summarize his points. And I'm going to give a brief introduction. I just want to tell you where it is. You could see it afterwards. It's starts on page Taf Yud Beis in the Shulchan Aruch that you have. That's where it's Sifkot and Tzadik Gimel starts. But what's relevant to us starts on page Taf Yud Daled. From page Taf Yud Daled through page about 4 pages long. He says, "Terem achala b'dinei ksamim amuska b'simen zeh matzasi choyv u'levayer had ekayim on the ksamim derabanan u'min atera ein shum tuma b'ksamim u'ledivrei hakol tahira hi lebayla." Then he goes into a whole long discussion. Now, there are two limudim about the pasuk about the pasuk is Zoiv Dam Bibsara, that it has to be, the one limud is Bibsara, has to be that she has to have Argosha, and one limud that has to be, she sees a flow and not a kesem. The question is, each one of these ones are independent of each other. Are they combined? Do you have to have both? Sometimes could you have one and not the other? So this is what the Sidrei Tahara really goes into explanation at length. The Alter Rebbe has this topic discussed in the beginning of Kuf Tzadik, in the beginning of Kuf Pei Gimel, in the Kuntres Nachman and Kuf Pe Gimel, in the Ha'aras in the Kuntres Nachman and Kuf Pe Gimel, and the Madura Basra and Kuf Pe Gimel. It's all relevant to this, and since you already learned Kuf Pe Gimel, I'm just going to review what we already learned in Kuf Pe Gimel. First we'll go to Kuf Tzadik. So Atzir Tara begins by explaining there's two ways of understanding the din of Ksamim. One is we focus on Hargasha, anything which does not come via Hargasha, even if it comes from her body, she's Tahir. Why? Because there was no Hargasha. Why is it? The Torah made Gzeres HaKosov. Gzeres HaKosov from the Torah, that the only way, what's the din of the Tumah of Nida, is B'Hargasha. Chachamim came and made Gzeira that she becomes Tameh even when there was no Hargasha. Why? The Gzeira is Shema, maybe she was Argasha V'Lavadaita. Maybe there was Hargasha and she did not feel it. That's the shit of Rashi, the way the Siddhara understands Rashi. Or she for sure didn't have Hargasha, but there was still Dam Nida over there, and B'meila, that's what the Chachamim were Geyser, that being that's for sure Dam, and even if there was for sure no Hargasha, the Chachamim were Geyser that she's still Aser. But Midiraisa, the only time she's Aser is when there was a Hargasha, the blood came by Hargasha. That's one kav. We follow Hargasha. The second kav is, it depends, what the Torah is oyser, any blood that's vadei megufa, any blood that for sure comes from her body. But Ksamim, you could say, maybe it came from somewhere else. And even though we know Safek Deraisa l'chumra, we could say the Gzeres HaKosov is, and in this case, there's no Safek Deraisa l'chumra. It's not the only case. We know Safek Mamzer, the Torah says that is not a Mamzer. So sometimes we have scenarios where Safek Deraisa is L'Kula. If the Torah defines that Safek Deraisa is L'Kula, then Safek Deraisa is L'Kula. So this scenario, one of the second way of understanding the din of Ksamim is that if we could say that it might have come from somewhere else and not Megufa, then it's not considered anymore it becomes a suffix, and in such a scenario you don't see suffix deraisa l'chumra, and because the Gzeres HaKosov here, suffix deraisa would be l'kula. Or to rephrase the two options, do we focus on the Hargasha? Does the Torah focus on the Hargasha? And therefore, any time that there is no Hargasha, we have a suffix. Maybe there was Hargasha and she didn't realize. Maybe she felt something else. She thought it's a different Hargasha. But therefore we have a suffix, and therefore that's when the Chachamim were Oyser. Or it has to do, that means what's Gzeres HaKosov, she's Tahir, or it has to do with whether it's Megufa or not. And if we could say that it's not Megufa, we have that's when the suffix is, that's what the Chachamim were Oyser. What would be the simple nafkamina, which the Siddur Tahara presents? If she knows for sure it came from her body, and she knows for sure there was no Hargasha, is she Tamei Midiraisa or Tahir Midiraisa? If we follow the first opinion that is based on Hargasha, she's Tahir Midiraisa. If we follow a second opinion that we follow whether it comes from her body, from the Rechem or not, and we know for sure that it came from the Rechem, then even without Hargasha, she would be considered Tamei. Then the Siddur Tahara goes to a long explanation and tells you according to Rashi, according to Tosfos, he says that's according to Rashi, and according to Tosfos, and according to Ravid, and according to a bunch of others, and he also concludes that that's also the shit of the Tur. If you know for a fact that it came from the woman's body, even if there's no Hargasha, she's Tamei Midiraisa. But according to the Rambam, it's not so. According to the Rambam, for her to become Tamei Midiraisa, you have to have both limudim. You also have to have Hargasha, and also you have to know for sure that it came from her body. And therefore, according to the Rambam, by a kesem, even if there was a Hargasha, as long as you could be toilet the Hargasha and something else, she's Tahir Minatayra. Midiraisa, she's Tahir. The Rabbanan, she's Aser. Why? Because it's not for sure from her body. We're missing one element. If you do a bdike, then you know for sure it came from her body. Right? So then we need to have the element of argasha. So the Rambam over there says that we say there was a chazaka that there was argasha. Like this is also explained in Alter Rebbe in the beginning of Pegimel. There's a chazaka, there's argasha, and she made a mistake, and therefore she's tamim min atayra. The only way that she's not tamim min atayra in a scenario of a bdika is if it's for sure there was absolutely no hargasha. And Chachamim were oyser anything that's not that. The Chachamim were oyser a kesem. Why? Being that you could be toilet that it came from somewhere else, so mina toilet, the chayre should be mutter, even if there was argasha. Why? Because you have a suffix if it's megufar or not. So then comes the shaila for suffix deraisa l'chumra. So the answer is the Rambam holds that the din of suffix deraisa l'chumra is a derabanan. The Chachamim established the rule of suffix deraisa l'chumra. So same Chachamim were able to say that in this scenario it doesn't apply. So for that, according to the Rambam, we need both options, both ideas to make a woman tamei, to be able to make her tamei midiraisa. You have to have argasha, and you have to have vaday megufa. The moment you have a suffix in one of them, then it automatically falls into the category of a kesem. So I'm going to move on to the Alter Rebbe. We'll start first with the Alter Rebbe and Siman Kuf Tzadik, even though it makes sense logically to start from Siman Kuf Gimel, but let's first start with the Alter Rebbe in the beginning of Siman Kuf Tzadik, the first Alter Rebbe in the beginning of Siman Kuf Tzadik. The first one, the Alter Rebbe says by Lo Hirgisha, it says that the Chachamim were oyser, even she was afilu Lo Hirgisha, that's what Shulchan Aruch says. The Alter Rebbe says, what does Lo Hirgisha mean? Pirush, afilu yodua sheloi b'argasha. Not only when you have a suffix whether there was argasha, when you know for a fact that there was no hargasha, she's still tmeya midrabanan, only midrabanan. Right, so it means for the first thing, first point you want to look at it, that means that the ksamim is not only if there was a suffix, maybe there was argasha, maybe there was no argasha. Even if for sure there was no argasha, it still falls into the category of a kesem, and she's still asur, but midrabanan. Then the Alter Rebbe continues, "Mihu afilu ras adam migufa eina tmeya ela tumas kesem." If she sees blood from her body, it would seem to imply if she for sure saw blood that came from her body, but there was no hargasha, for sure no hargasha, and for sure from the body, she was still only tamei ela tmeya ela tumas kesem. She was not tamei midrabanan, and not like what we saw in the Tahara, that there are some opinions that if it's for sure comes from the body and there was for sure no hargasha, should be also midiraisa. Yeah, im yodua sheras or shelo b'hargasha. Yeah, if we know for sure there was no hargasha, what's an afkamin? I'll try to give you two afkaminas. First of all, ras al beget savua or al davar she'ena mekabel tuma, because it comes on sifyud. Over there, if she sees on something which is a beget savor, something which is not mekabel tumah, if she sees and she sat on the floor and she saw blood and we know for sure it came from the body, it's still considered a kesem. If it would be considered anything, it would be considered a kesem midiraisa. It's for sure not a problem. But kesem animtza begufo b'bigdeo, if she has a kesem that she's found on her body or on her clothing, even though technically you could have said from a long time ago, really there was argasha, she forgot that she had argasha, still no leichashin l'hochim midiraisa, we're not worried about it midiraisa. Elo midirabanan, only midirabanan, fidas Rashi, according to Rashi. Ve'af, and even if we are worried, even if we do want to be chayshish to that midiraisa, Or even if we say that you don't need Bichlal Hargasha, and as long as it comes Megufa, she's still considered Tameh. Still, Leiko Yisur Deraisa B'chsamim. Still, there is no Isur Deraisa in the Kesem. So even if you move away the whole Hargasha element, there is still no issue of Ksamim Deraisa. Why? Because then we come to the second limud. Shenemar dam yezoiva, dam v'lei kesem. It's got to be blood, not a kesem. So even if you're going to eliminate, even if you're going to say we are choishesh, that even when there's absolutely no argashe, if it comes migufa, she's still asur. According to the second opinion, you still have the second limud of dam v'lei kesem, and therefore it would still be considered midrabanon. Why is that? Because at some you always have a inherent suffix. What's the suffix? Could be it came from somewhere else. We always have a suffix. Maybe this kesem came from elsewhere. That's why every kesem, the chachamim, the midiraisa becomes is tahir. Only midirabanan becomes asur. V'lav migufahu. Shem leisaska b'ksamim v'lav adaita. Yeah, first suffix, maybe she was busy with something which would cause a kesem, she forgot about it. We don't say argash of lavadaita, we say ksamim v'lav. She was busy with ksamim when she didn't realize. And even if you want to say that it's migufa, and even if you want to come and say that it comes from her body, shaman aliyu. Maybe it came from, not from the rechem, it came from the other area of the body. And in that place there is no, it's not considered dam nida. Right, so now he comes and he goes and he references something he spoke about in Kuftei Gimel. We're going to get to it soon. And we're going to come back to this soon. I'm not going to explain it here, and we're going to go to Kuftei Gimel. Even according to the Shita of Rashi that was explained earlier, that when you find in the bottom part of the body you find blood, we say talinan b'mokir, we say that probably came from the makir. Why? The roiv dami mitzuyim sham. Because the majority of blood in the woman's body comes from the makir and not from the aliyah. And therefore we can't say Hamed Isha al Cheskasa, that she stays with the Cheskas Tahara when she finds blood in that area of her body. In this scenario we don't say that. We don't use this Roiv Damim to remove the Chazakeh. Why is it? Interesting definition of what Roiv is. Over here, the whole Yisod of Ksamim is because we say maybe it came from somewhere else, from the rest of the world, not from the woman's body. So when we look at Roiv, we don't look at Roiv of the woman's body. We look at Roiv of Me'alma, of the world. So if you look at the whole world, the majority of blood that's flowing in the world is not from the Makir. You look at the woman's body in that area, yes, the majority of blood flowing in that area comes from the Makir. But when you look at it, since we're talking about a kesem and me'almasi, so which roiv are we going to look at? We're not looking at the roiv of where we found it. We're looking at the roiv of which category we put it into. We put it into the category of me'alma. Therefore, we have to look at the roiv of me'alma. So the way he says it, a lot of blood. We don't use the roiv, that's the fact that the majority of blood in that area of the woman's body is from the makir. We don't use that to take apart the chazakah. And then we say, Amrina Hamid Ishal Cheskasa, she stays in the Cheskas Tahara, V'hai Dam Me'alma also. And this blood came from the roiv. Kesem we say comes from Me'alma, so this blood also comes from the roiv. But the roiv of the Alma. And therefore, Midiraisa, she's mutter. Chachamim came and said that in this scenario, we consider it as if it came from her body. Why? Not because the Chachamim established that every time we see blood we have a suffix. It's because we have no other choice. Because we couldn't come up with any way to be told this kesem in something else. Being that she knows for sure she wasn't dealing with anything that could have generated the kesem. So therefore, because we have nothing else to pin it on, we have no choice. The only suffix we have over here is whether it came from the rechem or from the aliyah. Therefore, the chachamim were goyzer on this that it becomes asur. But midiraisa, she remains asur chazaka. Midiraisa, the roiv that we follow is the roiv of the alma, because we look at it as compared to the alma. Even midirabanan, the only reason every kesem we try to find a way to be materet. Elamai, the chachamim tell you, if you're in a scenario where you have only one suffix, and you can't be toilet and anything, because you don't have a suffix, maybe it came from, you don't have a tliyah to say a suffix, maybe it came from something else, you don't have a second suffix. Therefore you're stuck. So Chacham said, okay, in such a scenario we consider it as if, ke'ilu, the lashon of the mechaber, the lashon of the ramad, lashon of the tur, ke'ilu ra'aseh v'adai, as if it was, she for sure saw. But otherwise, it's not considered that she saw. That means, just to summarize what we see from Alter Rebbe here, she sees midiraisa, you need both limudim. Sai, you have to have argosha, and sai, dam v'loi kesem. Re'iyah and not a kesem. And so, b'midrabanon or machmer, sai, when you know for sure there was no argosha, it's still asur midrabanon. And sai, when she for sure saw from her body and for sure there was no argosha, we still say that's only midrabanon. We don't say that when it's for sure from her body without a argosha, it's midraisa. So we need the begufa and argosha. But still, to be able to make it asur, even if we're going to be choishish that it's deraisa, it's still only going to be, even if you're choishish, even want to be choishish, that might be that seeing from her body, that migufa, without a hargasha, might be a shayla of deraisa, still no, kesem v'loy dam, the limud dam v'loy kesem. Therefore, if it's a kesem, it's not a problem. So this is here. He references in this sifkatan to what he talks about in Kuf Pei Gimel. What is the reference in Kuf Pei Gimel? It's Sifkat Gimel in Kuf Pei Gimel. Problem with Sifkat Gimel and Kuf Pei Gimel is you have the Agoyas and you have Madura Basra, and it goes back and forth, and the Madura Basra is written after Kuf Tzadik also. And the Agoyas means the first was written in Shulchan Aruch, then the Kunter Sachren, then the Madura Basra. And then the Maril wrote Hagoyes on the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch in Kuf Pei Gimel based on the Madura Basra. So that's the seder of how you're supposed to learn it. You'll get to see everything, how it falls into place. So in Sifkat and Gimel, the Alter Rebbe, we went through this, so I'm just going to run through it quickly. In Sifkat and Gimel, where it talks about the beginning, Sifkat and Gimel of Kuf Pei Gimel, not of Kuf Tzadik. In Kuf Pei Gimel, where the opening statement of Hilchos Nida is that the woman, Isha Sheyas Damim Kaira, Bein Be'oines, Bein Be'rotzen, Tmeya, if blood comes out from Kaira, Vehu Shetargish B'tziyose, as long as there's Argosha. What is this Argosha? Alter Rebbe right away tells him, Amakar the praise, Hashem B'psara, Shetargish B'psara. The first limud is B'psara, that you have to have Argosha to make it a deraisa. Midirabanon. What is midirabanon? Afilu yotzei mino tipo kechad lepachas v'kem b'lei argosha, still tmeya. Now, if she sees, not a kesem, if she sees blood and there was no hargosha, she's still tummy, based on tesis. K'may shechmiru b'ksamim, the kaman b'simen kuf tzadik. Like a chomer machmer in ksamim. Same way we're machmer in ksamim. We're also machmer in blood that came from the woman's body, for sure without a hargosha. Both of them are asur midirabanan. The same reason, the same logic. There's no hargosha. Over here also he connects the two limudim together. There's no hargosha, similar to the limud of dam v'lei kesem. Both are connected to each other. Therefore, mikol makayim habidekes, af habidekes bedavar she'ena mekabel tumo. Now comes, this is the Hagoy on the side of the Maril, which is based on the Madura Basra. And this actually contradicts what we learned over here in Siman Kuf Tzadik. He says, "Afa b'deket v'o shem mekabel tuma, oy l'shar poiskim b'tziv'oinim she'ena mekabelim tumas ksamim, nami tmeya." And tmeya over here implies this midiraisa. Why? Mishum shekvar hoyo b'vsara mibifnim. Being that it was already b'vsara inside her body, she becomes tamei right away. Midiraisa. But this is based, this Hagoy of the Maril is based on the Madura Basra. But let's put that aside for a second. Let's go back to what Alter Rebbe says over here before we get to the Madura Basra. What a bdika. But the bdika without a hargosha, if you know for sure that it came from a body, or a bdika on something which is not mekabel tuma, or a bdika on tzivoinim, it would not be, why would it be a deraisa? It should fall into the category of a derabanan. Because if there was for sure no hargasha, it would be considered a rabbanon. Right? Because you need both elements. But over here it seems like it's a deraisa. This is based on Madura Basra. Let's go back to the standard of the Alter Rebbe. So he says, midrabanon, if she sees blood that comes out of her body without hargasha, she's only telling midrabanon, like in ksamim, when shechmiru b'ksamim. So now, when it comes to bdika, the Alter Rebbe continues, if you have if you do a bdika, so we have two shittas, a shittas Rambam. The first Alter Rebbe explains shittas Rambam, that becheskas shebo bargosha, every blood that comes from the rechem, according to shittas Rambam, if blood comes from the rechem, it comes to argosha. It can't be a scenario that is blood from the body. That can't, but it's pretty much impossible. There should be blood from the rechem without some form of hargosha. And therefore she felt something. She didn't know for sure what she was feeling. She thought it was something else. But chazaka, that every blood comes with a hargosha. And therefore she thinks it's something else. Be'emes it's hargosha sadam. And therefore she is tamei midiraisa, because we say chazaka that there was a hargosha when there was a bdika. Without a bdika, we don't say that. That's according to Rambam. According to Taisves, it's nothing to do with. It's not specifically limited to. We don't say that every blood is a chazaka of hargosha. Rather, we say that there was hargosha and she thought it was something else. Not this chazak is for sure hargosha. Probably there was hargosha. So what would be according to the shit of the Rambam, the Maril right away points out in the sides, if baruch lo shelo yirgisha bilti ho'ed, if she knows for sure that there was no hargosha except for the bdika. For example, she did a bdika right away and she was tahir. Then we would say that there was taka no hargosha and she is tahir. But if she did not do a bdika right away, if she waited an amount of time, we say there was hargosha and the hargosha passed. Go back. So you have a shit of Rashi, a shit of the Rambam, which is that every blood must come with hargosha. If Taisus there was probably was hargosha and you forgot what hargosha was. Therefore, this is what the main point over here that's relevant to Kuf Tzadik. According to the Rambam, anytime you have a situation where you're able to come up with a tliya, that it came alma and not from her body, on the bdika aloed, talinan, we do the tliya. That aglaim ledavar the imigufa voice. Because we know if it will be from her body, there would for sure be hargosha. It wouldn't be, because according to the Rambam, every blood comes to hargosha. So the fact that you have blood on the aid that was in the body, we still say it's not. If we're able to be toilet in something, we will still not make it a deraisa. Why? Because we say that because we know for sure there was no argosha. She's not, because if we know for sure there's no argosha, she said then she is, if we could be toilet in something else, we say we'll be toilet in something else. It came from somewhere else.
How do you have something else on the date?
A cut, we toilet in the makkah. Because she maybe the bdika, she was busy with ksamim, she was busy with something within the kitchen, and she didn't check, they splattered on her body, and then she made a bdika. She didn't check the aid, she didn't check her body before she checked the aid. If you could come up, it doesn't tell you how, but if you could come up with a solution, with a place that would be me'alma on the aid, we would still say that it's, we would be tailing it. Why? Because we know that if the only time we're machmir, and we say the chazakah that every dam comes with a hagosh, and therefore bdikas aid makes her aser, is when we have nothing to be toilet on. But when you could be toilet, when you could find something to be toilet on, according to the Rambam, it would be fine. According to Taisus, it wouldn't be enough. According to Taisus, even that, in such a scenario, even if you could be toilet, the fact that it was on the aid still makes it aser. Even though there's something to be toilet on, we still remain with the suffix, and therefore she is aser. Over here, the Maril again points out to you, Mashmas HaTeisus Fanenu, Kach Mashmas Sefer HaTruma, Da'afim Borur Lo Shlo Hirgisha Klal, Nami Tmeyo Vadai Mideraisa. Disagrees. This is again the Maril referencing to what it says in Madura Basra.
Well, how does that feel with the Tzura Sebastian here? It says, even if she had Argosh with no Re'iyah, she's stomach.
That's what he points out to you. He says if she knows for sure there was no hargosha.
No, she had a Argosh with no Re'iyah. Then my
possession. So hargosha without any re'iyah, and there's no re'iyah Torah afterwards.
She's talking deraisa.
She's talking deraisa because there was hargosha.
But we're saying that if there's what did you just say in Shem Taisus?
When in the Hagar or in the Hagar says that if she knows for sure there was no hargosha, even if she knows for sure there was no hargosha, and she saw blood, she's still tamei vada midaraisa. Because the dam is megufa, probably.
Okay, it's not an argument with possession.
No, he says it's based on
Based on
no, it's not based on possession. He says it's based on Madura Basra. Where the Madura Basra understands this. Now, aside the Kuntesachrin, the first Agar in the Kuntesachrin, which is from the Madura Basra, and then afterwards in the actual Madura Basra is where the Alter Rebbe goes and explains the whole shit why according to Taisvis, this idea that according to Taisvis, if there was a hargosha, if there was no hargosha whatsoever, but you know for sure that it came from her body, she's still asur midiraisa and not midirabana. The big nafkamina would be if you have a suffix. If you have a suffix midiraisa, we would still be machman. The fact that you have a siddur tahara that says that one of the svaras is exeris akosov, that we're not machman and suffix deraisa, even over here when we were mekel in the sfeikus, and we have two sfeikus. Every kesem, because you have two suffix. Maybe it's from her body, maybe it's not from her body, maybe it came from something else. Even if it came from her body, maybe it came from the area which is not a rechem, and therefore she's mutter. But to define, based on one suffix, we say suffix deraisa, we say suffix deraisa is not l'chumra in this scenario. We don't have a solid mocker for it, so we can't just come and say it's suffix deraisa the kula in this scenario, only according to the Rambam, but not even. That means only according to the way the Siddur Tahara understands the Rambam. So that is essentially the definition of a kesem. The definition of a kesem is anything which is not. What's the Rabbanon? Once we know what the deraisa is, we could fit everything else into a Rabbanon. The big machlekes is what falls into a deraisa. We have two limudim. Are the two limudim independent of each other, or are the two limudim interconnected? Do we have to say that there's sai? You have to have that. The ones that say that the two limudim are not, you can have one, or you can have that. According to Alter Rebbe, you have to have both limudim. You can't say either or. Even if you're going to say that the first limud, you're going to say that you have a chashash deraisa in the first one, still you always have the limud of dam v'lei kesem. According to the other opinions, some other opinions, it's all one and the same. What defines a kesem? Something which comes a blood that comes without argasha, and we don't know where it came from. It's not bipsara. But if it's bipsara, it's still considered a problem. So based on this is what comes the hemshech of the first Sa'if in Kuf Tzadik. That the Shulchan Aruch says, "V'mirgisha sheniftach mekoyrel lohoitzi dam, ubotka achar kach v'lo motza klum, yesh mi she'omer she'itmeya." The Mechaber continues that if a woman she feels a hargashe, but she sees nothing, and she made a b'dikah, and she did not find a mare tahor, she found nothing. It was completely clean. Because if she finds a mare tahor, you know the hargashe is for the mare tahor. But if she didn't find anything, then yesh mi she'omer she'itmeya. Why she'itmeya? The Alter Rebbe right away explains over here, because we say for sure blood came out. Vada yotza tipas dam kechardol. V'niskaneach, oinimoik. Maybe it got washed off. Maybe it shrunk. We don't know where it is. The hargashe svara deraisi heicha deleika lemisla b'mida achrina. Because hargashe on its own becomes an issue deraisa whenever you don't have anything else to be tolerated. So if the hargashe, again, you have to remember, this is all what we learn over here in Kuf Tzadik is all based, the same thing as in Kuf Pe Gimel in the Pnim of the Alter Rebbe. You have to put aside what you learned in the Kudas Achron and the Madura Basra when it comes to definitions of what hargashe and what the shittas are. Over here, anytime you have nothing to be toilet on this hargashe, you can't say hargashes shemesh, hargashes meiraglayim. For example, you can't be toilet in it, so we go back and we say the hargashe by itself is enough to make it a deraisa, even though you didn't find anything. If you would find something, you'd be fine. But if you don't find anything, we say the hargashe made it a deraisa. The fact that you didn't find it is a chesaron in you. You couldn't find it, but it's there, came out. The hargashe brought about blood. And therefore, im achar shirgisha botkom yad umotza maris tahoiris, talina hargasha bohen. If right away after she does a bdika, she sees something tahor, if right after she does a hargasha, she does a bdika and she finds something tahor, we say that the hargasha was for something tahor. Then he says, Noshim Shem Becheskes Mislokas Damim, then the whole, over there, even if there's a hargasha of Niftach Mekoira, we still don't say that she is tummy.
That also according to Trumas Dashim?
Huh?
Would the Trumas Dashim say that also dam came out with the avatar, or it would
If what? By who? By Mesulakas Damim?
No, by a normal woman.
A normal woman, if she sees something tahir?
Yeah.
No, we said that Gosha was something tahir. That's it.
So that would be Psichas HaKever, B'lei Dam.
It's not Psichas HaKever. She felt some form of argasha in her body of something moving, a zivas davar lach, and it didn't come from the market. If it will be from the market, there'll be blood. obviously the hargasha that she had was not the hargasha which makes her thing. So here, this is similar to what we have in Kuf Pei Gimel, in the second Haggadah of the Maril and Alter Rebbe. He says that if she does a bdike, similar to what he says over here, when you do a aid, according to the Rambam, there was no hargasha, and the only hargasha she knows for sure is because of the aid, and then she did bdika right afterwards, and she found that it was a tahar bdika, then she's fine. But if she waited, then we say that the hargasha was there was hargasha v'lavadaita, and the blood disappeared, or whatever else happened over there. So now let's look how the Piskei of the Tzemach Tzedek puts it all into place. It's not the Piskei of the Tzemach Tzedek, Piskei of the Talmud of the Tzemach Tzedek. Like I told you, that it goes based on the Seder of the Mechaber. You have 4 lines in the Mechaber, and you have about 30 lines of the Piskei Dinim. And he summarizes all the shittas, and he tells you what, based on the last thing I just mentioned to you, how long afterwards you do a b'dika. So he says, the Chachamim were geyser, same lashon as the Shulchan Aruch. And she has to do hefsek tara, and she has to do the b'dika, and shiva nekim, and then she kilur asavadai. And then the shit of a trumas hadeshin, that if mergish niftach mekoyel yitzidam vodka achar kach v'lei matzah klum, yesh mishaym shitmeya. It's trumas hadeshin. Why is that? And he continues like the same what the Alter Rebbe says. The vada yatsa tipas dam kechad lo v'niskaneach choynimoik. When does this apply? Shlei matzah klum. If a matzah maras tehoyr, is it going lovon or yorek tehoyro? Shetoylen argosha bohem. We say that argosha was on this specific matter toyr. Va'afilu lo matzah klum. The tmeya davko kesheloi bodko keshiur veses shel hargosha. It's only when she did not do a bdike during the shiur veses. Av bodko atzma sech shiur veses matzah tehoyro. If she does do a bdika right away, and she finds tahir, mara tahir, she's still tahira. That's a crazy place. One shitta. The second shitta is the chavas das. No, I feel about kashiv, she's still tmeya. Why is that? The question is, do we look at, again, the svara goes, do we look at the argoshas, that the argosha by itself makes a woman tamei until proven otherwise? Or do we say that the definition of argosha is there should be blood coming out also, not just argosha? So if some time passes, then we say there was argosha and disappeared. If no time, there was dam, so there was argosha, which was dam, and the dam disappeared. But if there's if no time passed, we say there's definitely no dam. So this argosha was not a argosha of blood, even if nothing is seen. But according to the Shitta, the hargasha by itself, that is what makes a difference between a tuma and tahara. And then do we look at hargasha? We don't look specifically at the dam. We look at the hargasha. And such a scenario would be she would be tummy right away. And then he goes and says the other way. Now what happens if she does a b'dika and she take finds maris tahiris, which is what we said in the beginning, that what the Alter Rebbe brings from the Trumas Hadeshin, that if she does a b'dika and she does see maris tahiris, she is tired. You also have to look at the amount of time that passed. If it's a long time afterwards, vaday tmeya. We don't say that the argosha that she saw had a long time ago, a few hours ago, is what brought the maris tahiris that she sees now. The only way is matzah samuch l'argosha. What is considered samuch? He puts you in parentheses. V'yesh stapik bozeh ma nikra samuch. What is considered samuch? You can have different calculations. So he says, "Umistabra lehachmir b'chol eila." See that the Hara wants to be machmir in all of them, but ultimately hakoil lefira eisei ne'amayra. This is where let the Rav think about it and decide what's exactly what the amount of time that makes sense on such a situation. What's angenommen? The Fira Yisei Ne'amayra is angenommen. Every case is for itself. I'm sure we could find if there's Kabbalah on it. And then if you jump a few lines down, you'll see again when it comes to Ksamim, he says the same thing. He goes after he discusses different forms of Ksamim. A few lines about parentheses in the middle of close to the bottom of the Sif Aleph and the Piskadim. Everything depends on the situation. נפתח מקוילה בשש מייסה כדאי כשש ריוסו, אם מבחינס בזה תמיה, לא יתנם מלגלם הגרסי בזה ולך. לא גרש פסיכס המוחר. לכן בוד כמיית כשיור שלו מספיק למלגלם מסיעה בשדיים, he talks about things. He says, you have to look at every case by itself. He gives you all the things you have to think about when it comes to Shaila v'Kesem. Don't just jump and say, Osir. To find out, do your research. Is there a possibility of psichas hamokir? Could the hargosha be from something else? Did she something? Maybe the moisture is from Meiraglayim. If it was a strong gitush, it was not just a strong gitush, etc. So when it comes to ksamim, because it is the Rabbanan, so we look to be mekel. We don't look to be machmir. Ksamim, to be able to define a kesem that makes a woman asur, there's a lot of hoops to jump to make the woman asur. We want to figure out how to make it the Rabbanan, we want to figure out how to make it mutter. But to define what a kesem is, you have to ask all the questions, because you might end up in a deraisa, according to some shittas. Not according to Alter Rebbe over here in Shulchan Aruch. It's not very easy to make a kesem a deraisa, but you still have to ask all the questions to make sure that you get that it's taka a kesem the Rabbanon, so you can be mekel, and not a shadow deraisa. According to Madura Basra. If you have, for sure came from her body. According to Taisa, Madura Basra, yeah. Depends what you ask. Call the Federation and Amida. Okay. Tzlacha.